What's going on, my people? This is your host, Blanche Eden with Black Trending News. This is episode 16, and tonight we're going to be talking about a topic that I haven't heard too much of, so I figure let's talk about it, right? Homosexuality in Egyptian culture in ancient Kemet. Let's get into it. There is, a few stories, maybe like 3 stories that I want to get into that are, evidence of homosexuality in Egypt and ancient Kemet. Now, the reason why it's, in my opinion, such a disputed subject is because I think that Black people want to believe that homosexuality could never be an African thing. It could never be out of Africa. It was given to us. It was forced upon us. It was indoctrinated on us. And there's no way in heck that same-sex relationships came from African people. And this is one reason why I think it's so disputed. Go ahead and use the comment section respectfully if you feel that way or otherwise. But every year I feel different about homosexuality. I don't necessarily agree that it was forced on people. I mean, it's sex, right? So sex is something that does not have to be forced on people. It's a natural thing that I think most of us can agree happens. Now, sex between the same sex, many may say, is not natural. Many argue that same sex between animals happens frequently. Not all animals, but there's a good number of animals that the same sex engagement occurs. So there's that theory that it's not natural, because apparently it is. There's so much opinion around it, right? But I want to talk a little bit about fact and discuss these stories that lead to, a glimpse of homosexuality in Egyptian culture. And there's not a lot of it, but you tell me what you think. Let's get into it. So the first story that depicts homosexuality in ancient Egypt or Kemet, and it would be called the best known case of possible sexuality between men that lived and served under Pharaoh Nisuri during the 5th dynasty, which was 2494 to 2345 BC. The 2 men, their names were Nayunk Khnum and Khnum Hotep. They each had families of their own with children and wives, but when they died, their families apparently decided to bury them together in one and the same mastaba tomb. A mastaba tomb is considered a house of eternity. It's a type of ancient Egyptian tomb in the form of a flat-roofed, rectangular structure with inward sloping sides constructed out of mud bricks. So it's not your typical pyramid shape tomb. They mark the burial sites of many eminent Egyptians during the early dynastic period and Old Kingdom. Okay, so these 2 men were very important, apparently. They were buried together by their families. Now, what makes people get the impression that they were gay or homosexual is the several paintings that depict the both men embracing each other and touching their faces, nose on nose. This type of body language depicted lots of room for speculation of being gay or homosexual in ancient Egypt. There's, of course, disagreement. A lot of historians and Egyptologists believe that this is just acceptance of homosexuality and that it was okay and accepted by the Egyptian culture, Kemet culture. Some scholars, believe that they were twins and maybe conjoined twins. It's possible that some people are in denial of this. They have their thoughts and feelings that are very strong about homosexuality and how it's an abomination and etc. And they would rather believe something else than maybe these 2 men wanted to be buried together and they loved each other and they were homosexual. And that's it, Another situation, King Pepi II and his general officer, Sassinet. These 2 were also dating. They want to say here, or maybe having like a secret relationship. Let's get into it. So this happened in the Middle Kingdom. And it speaks about an anonymous citizen who comes to the audience hall of King Pepi II, or his name at the time was also Neferkari. The citizen wants to lament about an unnamed circumstance, but the king does not want to listen to the lament. So he orders his royal musicians to drown the stranger's speech with noise. Disappointed, the stranger leaves the palace. When this happens several times, he orders his friend, the high official Tejedi, to follow the king. The king, in turn, is frequently leaving the palace during the night. Tejedi finds out that King Pepi II keeps visiting his loyal general officer, Sassanet, for several hours, then returning home. The chapter in which King Pepi II visits his loyal general officer is subject of passionate discussions, especially one certain phrase stays in the center of investigations. And that text reads, "His Majesty went into Sassanet's house and did to him what His Majesty desired." The phrase "doing what one desires" is a common, they want to say it's a flowery phrase to describe sex. You know, it's like a soft way of putting sex, I guess. And for that reason, scholars and readers and people are convinced that Pepi II's had a interest in same-sex relationship with the general officer. Some others believe that it's allegoric and religious text in which the sun god Ra visits the underworld god Osiris during the middle 4 hours of the night. Thus, King Pepi II would be taking the role of Ra and Sassanet would be taking the role of Osiris. The phrase "doing what one desires" would therefore be overrated and misinterpreted. Let me know what you think about that. I mean, I really believe that homosexuality took place everywhere in the world. I mean, I don't think that there are places in the world that excluded same-sex intercourse. I just don't. I mean, there's a lot of scenarios where men would be by themselves, like prisons maybe, or camps, or something of that nature. They would be alone. There'd be no women there. So, I mean, obviously they may, like, look, like, we're here. Let's try it. I don't find it to be anything crazy or out of this world. I mean, it's sex. It's like, well, they probably find that it feels good and they like it, and fuck, they start to accept it, and then before you know it, it's a thing. So, I mean, incest is a normal thing still in this world, and that is considered a quote abomination, but it's accepted in many religions. It really, unbelievably, that it really is accepted in many religions. They stay inside of the family. They have sex with their family members, and they have children with them and families with their cousins. It's just, it still happens, and it's not illegal in Europe. So, and probably other parts of the world. So why would homosexuality be any more abominous than incestual sex? The next story here is a very famous story about same-sex intercourse in Egypt, and it can be found in the Kahun Papyri, dating back to the Middle Kingdom. It contains the nearly completely preserved story of the Osiris myth and the legendary fight for the throne of Egypt between Horus and Seth. The chapter in question reports that Seth was unutterably jealous about his young nephew Horus because Horus was very young and popular. He was quite pampered by the other gods. Seth instead had very few companions, and he was comparatively unpopular because of his choleric and vindictive behavior. So I guess nobody liked this guy. He probably wasn't a nice person. As a result, Seth tried to either chase away or even kill Horus, no matter what the cost. When Seth constantly fails, he plans to humiliate his rival so badly that Horus would be banned from Egypt forever. Seth invites Horus to a party and convinces the teenage Horus to drink more than Horus could normally cope with. When Horus is drunk, Seth seduces him to sleep over the night in one bed together. When lying together in one bed, Seth grabs Horus and rapes him. But Horus tricked Seth. He pretended to be drunk and staged the entire thing. You make what you want of that, people. He catches Seth's semen with his hands and hides it. Don't ask me how that happened. If he raped him and then caught his semen in his hand and hid it, did he, I guess, pull out? I don't, I'm just trying to imagine how that went down. The next morning, Horace runs to his mother, Isis, to tell her what happened. Isis is at first speechless with rage and disbelief, as she should be, right? Then she tells Horace to masturbate and use his semen to lubricate Seth's favorite food, which was Egyptian lettuce. Oblivious, Seth eats the manipulated lettuce. Then he goes to the divine court to inform on Horus. At first, the divine judges swear at Horus, but then Thoth, the scribe of the court, calls for Seth's semen to emerge from the body of Horus. Instead, the semen of Horus emerges from the body of Seth. Seth blushes in embarrassment and shock, then flees, and Horus is acquitted. Okay, so that's a mouthful, and I pretty much get the point of it. Again, it's a different time, right? So it's a different time. So it seems a little odd. It seems very odd, actually, but maybe this is how they handle things, by putting semen in their food. So this is a famous rape story. It clearly describes rape, so there's no argument there. Raping an underage boy. One man raping an underage boy. It's not consensual, and there's no, apparently there's no love between the two of them. The fact that Horace pretended to be drunk, I don't know. I think that was the part that really struck me as weird. Was he scared? Maybe he was scared to react. He didn't want his uncle to kill him. I don't know. But that is what I've found on homosexuality in Egypt. There is a lot of proof of homosexuality in the Greek and Roman parts of the world, and they frequently studied with the Egyptians in Kemet. Pretty much everybody that is studied in Greek philosophy in school, in the education system, studied and received their education out of Kemet, Egypt. So, and they were gay. There was a lot of homosexuality and gay relationships and sex in Greek and Roman. So, in Rome. So maybe, perhaps they brought it over to Egypt. Who knows? But like I said, homosexuality is just sex between two men or two women. And it's that simple. So to think that it had to be brought from somewhere, I don't know. I think that people had a lot of time on their hands. They might have had a lot of time on their hands, and there's a lot of cultures. I want to say there's a lot of evidence I read some evidence of Greek culture and how they hated women. Basically, they hated women, and they spoke so negatively and horribly about women. I read things like the two best days for women are their wedding day and their funeral. Like things like that they would say about women, just very negative and very ugly. So I didn't read anything like that about the Egyptian culture and women. So definitely there was some hostility towards women in the Greek culture. I'm not sure why. Again, let me know in the comment section if you do know why they hated women so much. It would explain the frequent homosexuality. I mean, I don't know. I just, I wanted to share that, though. I thought that was interesting because I've never read it before. Let me know what you think in the comment section. Have a good night.